Spar Max, Max 3. Infinity CR Plus. And then 2 Iwata Eclipses, HPCSs. This one is very old and this one is new this year. So you can see this one's nice and shiny and this one's not. So I've just ordered new end piece for this so I can take all this off and freshen it up with a new needle and some other odds and sods, because they do tend to, after a while, they do suffer. I think it's about its 3rd or 4th one I've had for this. Once I replace that, it'll be as good as new. But this is the freshest one, and you can't, if you don't know which one you pick up, you can tell the difference in the way it sprays. Now I use a fresh bottle of this Detail Black. I only keep it a month, so that has November written on it, so there's nothing in there. I find if I keep them longer than a month, I don't know if it's the air gets to it or something, but the quality of the, you get a new bottle, it sprays out like in a pencil line without any hassle whatsoever. You get it a bit older and it's a bit gluggy, so I don't thin it or anything, so it is what it is. So only thing I do is I take my marbles and the crusty old lid. So what happens is it dries around the lid. That drops in your paint, that's not a good idea, because then it goes into the brush and it clogs it. So that's junk now. And I try and give myself a fresh bottle once a month. So it's the Detail Black, 0051. Now I buy 4 at a time, just so I have spares, and then I've got extra snidey ones just in case I run out. And then I have the Detail White as well. This stuff's amazing. So by far this is the best paint I've used. It's just a shame they only do, well, they do other colours, but I just have the black and the white. It gets a bit expensive. So there's a couple of marbles in there now. It's about 18 degrees in here. I've had the heating on for an hour or two, just slowly bringing it up to temperature rather than trying to cook everything. Now the temperature's starting to drop in the evenings. I will put all these in boxes and upset the current Mrs. Basil by taking them all inside. And I have another box as well of new paints. These are all my sort of opened and experimented bottles. So we have a 1/10 buggy. All the detail is in the nose. So we've got like a rip, I don't know if you can see that. There's, I don't know, sort of ripped effect there you can see it there. I cut it all wonky, and then I put some shading in it to make it look a little bit more flared. We're going to have a checkered flag there. Customer has asked to put carbon fibre in that, but I can't get the carbon fibre the right scale to make it look right, so I'm not going to do it. But the intention was to do it, but it's such a small checkered flag that the hex for the carbon, squares of the carbon, will look odd. So I'm not doing that. And then we've got white nose. This is a luminous yellow with orange fade in the flames, and then the back section is dark blue with a dark blue, well, with a black shading on the roof. So this is all blue, yellow, white, checkered flag. So all the details in the checkered flag, and then we've got an outer frame of the window which is black, and then we're going to have an inner frame which is a luminous yellow, he hopes, and then blue in this little bit here, and then this bit's all yellow. So, but as I said, all the detail is in this nice tiny bit at the front. How is everyone? So I've got 14 people watching, which is good. No comments yet though. Everyone say hello? Others have just been talking for. I know I don't talk to. I'm quite good at talking to myself anyway, but it's nice to know that there's someone listening. Hi Jack. That's good. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't. Alright Matt, I wasn't talking to myself, which I'm quite happy doing. So I'm going to use the better of my 2 eye waters. Hi Carl. Hello Will. The reason I'm streaming early is I asked very nicely, and Mrs. Basil said that she would put the kids to bed. Yeah, well, you can't beat a new bottle of paint. It just sprays effortlessly. So with our seashells, darkest colour through to lightest, so all the black first. So all this checkered flag section, and then the window frames, and then we do this roof shading, and then we get onto the lighter stuff. The hardest part of this was getting this ripped effect to go from the white into the check. I've got to put an orange fade into here as well. Yeah, orange fade. Otherwise, it would be white into, and it will get lost in the checkered. Obviously now with the temperature dropping, I've got to use the hairdryer a bit, but it's trying not to put too much heat into it too quickly. See when you're spraying, you can see it visibly drying. So it's just a case of not to cook it. That's why I only use sort of domestic hair dryers rather than a heat gun, because then you just put way too much heat through it. I find with these buggies the trickiest part are the window frames. Because you're trying to cut it's just very tricky to get in, because you're cutting at a slight angle anyway, so the blade starts to wander, so to get a straight line is very tricky. So I definitely took my time doing that, because it'll just look rubbish if I didn't get it right. He hopes. You can't really see the detail there. That's now a jagged edge. That's paint, by the way. I'm not bleeding. Yeah, very tricky because you're cutting on a angle. I don't know if you can see it. I'll get the light right. Oh no, you'll see it at the end. But that's the bit that's worrying me, is getting that to look jagged rather than just look like I've just been hacking it with a, yeah. This was an existing design, so this is just my version of it. So now it's a case of just picking, because we're now doing that, we're going to have like on this roof section there was a shaded flame. So now pick that out. Hopefully leave everything else where it should be, if I've cut right. There we are. That's come out in one section. Now if you can pull out all your mask in one piece, it means you've sprayed it thick enough, which is 2 coats, and you've cut it well enough that you're not, because if you crisscross all your cut lines, you just leave little star marks in it. So when you use any high chrome, all these little cross marks stick out and show up, and obviously you don't want it just doesn't look very nice. Hello Oscar. Right, I have thought about trainers, and I reckon they'd be easy. I know I'm sort of being a bit but see where I've learned inside out and back to front, if I could do it on the outside, I'd find it way easier. So a pair of trainers, yeah. I just don't fancy ruining any. But yeah, I think they'd be really easy. There's some really good videos to watch of other people doing it. I seem to have found my calling now, and well, I'd like to think I found my calling doing this. Right, so make sure there's no. So you get dry tip on the end of your nozzle, your tip, sorry. So every so often you'll see me picking away the dead paint, and you don't want too high a PSI now. But it's more guesswork than checking the actual PSI, because each gun fires different. So it's just finding what PSI works well. See, fresh paint always helps. So this is going to be a lot more straightforward. If I move that down a tiny bit. So that's my legs, the old wonky ones. So that's what we're now going to do. We're going to shade inside this, and then when we pull this out and then spray it all blue, you get a nice shading of the flame. He hopes. It's just an odd angle to actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to rub off my permanent marker lines so I get a clearer idea of what I'm doing. Because these I've found the right word in my head now, like a ghostling effect. So there you go, you can see them clearly now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and make them a little bit more, shade them in a bit, and it should be ghosted once they get the top coat. It's a bit trial and error. You'll find the PSI that your brush works at, and it's more practice than anything else. It's also finding a way of getting this so that it's comfortable. This is supposed to look subtle, so I don't want to make this too heavy. Hello Gerard, hello Scott. American Basil, as I've renamed him. Scott, you'll have to put a plug for your page up, so give your, is it 517 RC? I'd hope if I had some paint in there, wouldn't I? I'm wondering why it was running dry. don't know if I should put some hex pattern in there as well. In the actual flame section, but I might do it in the shading around the rest of this hex, because I'm going to, this bit's all blue, runs round to the cab, so I need to figure out how I'm going to join the two of them together, because that's going to come round into there. Because this section's blue and it runs up to here. See, the design I'm copying is off a touring car, so I need to put a cut line in here somewhere to go from blue to yellow. So if I match that up, if I go like that and then cut that in, there we go. And then try and make them look the same. Very, very technical, this. And if I run that with a knife, if I can see my... Oh, I can't see them. It's too much black paint. I hold that right up to the light. I do this very weird thing when I'm concentrating, like cutting like this and painting, I hold my breath, and I don't know why. I don't think it makes me any steadier. There we are. Right, so now in theory, I say that a lot in theory, that should peel out of there, if I can find my cut line again. There we go. Obviously you need good tweezers, otherwise this would be an absolute nightmare. Now it's a case of just, see, now you've got the flames on the roof. They look wicked actually. I would say that, but I'm actually quite surprised how cool they look. I eyeballed that when I drew those. I didn't actually, I just, oh, that looks right, and I just drew it. I'll get slated now because they're not identical. But then again, I have this theory that flames shouldn't be identical because they're not symmetrical. They're unique. Each flame. Well, that's the excuse I use. And so I think it's a thing not to make them look exactly the same. In this case now of going through every bit and pulling out the bit that's going to be blue. I'm going to put some shading in there. Because I want to put sort of my stamp on this. So to be safe, I think I did 3 coats of mask on this. I'm not really, I don't really do buggies very often, and this has got quite a lot of detail in it, so I wanted to make sure I had the mask nice and thick. So it pulls easily as well. Yeah, it's all in one section still. I've had it before where you think, oh, I'll just save a bit of time by not putting as much mask on so it dries quicker, and then you lose days because the stuff's so thin it doesn't, I'll just peeled a bit, it doesn't stick, it doesn't hold its shape when you try and pull it away in one go, and so you're left with like death by confetti because it pulls into 1,000 pieces and you can never pull it upright. But obviously good tweezers are the best bit of advice, and patience, which I've learnt. So that whole section, you could peel that all back out now, apart from that one pull, and that would all be Scott. I have no idea what shell this is. As I said, I'm not a buggy man. Hasn't got a label on it or anything, so I really haven't a clue. Actually, if you can do buggies as to concentrate just in on buggies, they're really easy because there's no lights and grills on them. This will take half the time of a touring car and less paint. Right, Ryan, I take your word for it. Is that because they're on buggy shells? They're kind of designed for the car, so you kind of know. Obviously, you know what it is. But is that a thing that they're? I mean, like with touring cars, they're sort of generic shells, and everyone uses the same one. But obviously, with buggies, they're kind of designed for each buggy. That's pretty cool if it is. As I know, my Schumacher has a lay down, and that has a kind of it has a unique shell for that. I didn't realise that was actually a thing. So I'm just rubbing off the permanent marker so I can see my shading a bit clearer when I start. There's nothing worse than going, I wonder if that's a line on it. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. I wonder why, I mean, like, because with touring cars, there's a couple of brands and everyone uses those brands, but I didn't realise that. Why do buggies, do they have like they're all specially moulded to fit a certain car, aren't they? That's pretty cool. But so there's no generic ones that you can just buy and it'll fit every car, I suppose, because each car's completely different. They won't. I'll just answer my own question then. Right, so now we've got the back section away. I'm now going to put some shading in around these flames to try and make them lift a little bit more, and then we're just going to blast this back section with blue. If you can see, I'm not trying to do it in one continuous movement. I'm doing like go one way, then go back the other, go back, so you don't sort of, your wrist can only bend certain ways, and the air hoses and stuff, and so it's better just to do it. When I first started, I was trying to get a constant line all the way around and be like really trying hard to do it. Now I just like, no, I'm going to go one way, then I'm going to go the other way, and I just make sure I crisscross in the section that's in the map. So normally I put a sheet of paper down so I can see clearer, but if I do that it flares up on the camera, so just me holding my breath again. It's alright. Taking my time a bit. I don't want to go too thick with this shading because this is going to be going from luminous yellow orange flames into this. And I don't want the black line to be too severe because it'll really give be a bit too harsh a line. So this isn't shading as such. This is like a weird pin. That's right. One thing I learned that helps me a lot is to have my elbows ground to the table. In one of I used to paint in my framing workshop at work, and I'd be holding the shell and I'd be standing and I'd be spraying into it, and you couldn't get a very good. So now I have my elbows on this table. So this table this is like a bench. I'm sitting on a chair that's like raised way high up so that I'm at a nice height. But it's very good to have your arms at least grounded, so you can pivot off your elbow easier. So I know that looks pretty severe at the moment, but once you put the blue in and then all this gets pulled away and then done with a really bright colour, that should give it some good depth, rather than just having a one block colour to another block colour. It just, I'm learning that you can separate colours. It gives it a better depth. I am going to put some hex panel in this, just a little bit. The thing with the hexes is not to put too much in. I have got a reference shell, but I can't put it on camera. But I'd love to show you the size of the hexes on this thing, because they look wrong to me because they're out of scale. I'd like to think my hex panels. So there's my thumbnail with paint on it, believe it or not. Gives it a much better scale look. That's my opinion, I know Ashley really likes my stars. In fact, he doesn't. He said every time I do a show with stars on, he sends me a picture of it. He said, "You ruined it," which is his opinion, which he's entitled to. And I can ignore his opinion. So he's just ordered a new shell, so he knows he's going to have stars in it. So I cut the question I get asked the most, other than "Are you single?" is how do I make my hex panels? And the answer is I make my own. So I use a cutting program. I have a little cutter called a Portrait Silhouette. I think it's with first generation, so mine's really old. And I found on Google, I just typed into Google hex pattern, and then got this thing up and then put it into the program and then just sat and mucked around with it for like 3 years. I mean, I've got like failed attempts here. There's failed attempts everywhere. And I made that one way too small and the bits wouldn't come out. But it took like an hour to cut it. I don't know why it's there. It's just there to annoy me. I'm going to get rid of that. And then there's a larger one that I also ruined. So it's trial and error, and I have now got a scale hex I really like. I've now just put hex panels all over my fingers. You find these absolutely everywhere. I can't believe where I found these. They just get stuck. So the most questions I get asked is, "Can I have your stencil?" It's like, no. I'll tell you exactly what I've done, but you make your own. I did try and sell them, nobody wanted them. I've now got hexes all over my fingers. And I've been using up to now a certain brand of low-tack masking sheets, which is what the hex is cut out of. That firm seems to have stopped trading, so I've had to use somebody else now. And the stuff is good, but it's a bit more tacky, so it takes a couple of goes before it loosens off, because otherwise it pulls all your pinstripes up. Right, me having a little rant there, it's just cost me a couple of seconds of picking off hex panels. They get stuck in the bench, then they get stuck on my elbow, and then I find them in the weirdest places, I really do. Anyway. Because you scratch your nose and then they get stuck on your face. And then my wife looks at me even odder than normal. So I've got some hex panel now just in the parts of the flame. I don't want to go too much, just enough. Well, I've got enough, I think. Right, so now that bit there's blue as well. So who's got some racing coming up? That's a nice topic to get everyone ranting and raving, isn't it? I am in Tier 3 in Kent, England. And from my reading and listening to them talk bollocks on the radio, I'm not allowed out of Tier 3. It says. And then from what I read this morning, that's being contradicted, which I don't understand. It's December anyway. I need to be at work, so I don't think I'd be racing anyway. So it's not as painful as in the summer when the weather was lovely and we couldn't race. Now it's rubbish and you don't really want to race. And December's important at work, so I've got to be, it's retail, so I've got to be there while it's trying to make some money. Right, new gun. Well, new gun. Older version of the Iwata, my other Iwata, and we're going to use pearl blue. Actually, I need to put a little bit of shading in that front bit I've just pulled out. Made. For that I'd had my guard off, so I'm going to put my guard back on, because what this has a habit of doing, because I don't run with the back cover on. So it sits there and all of a sudden it just rocks forward and it'll just dunk the needle, which will be a pain. So I always put the guards back on after I finish what I'm doing. So I always try and keep my guards in the same place. So when you then go to look for them, they're not under a bit of mask or on the floor, or because you'll never find them again. So the rear sections are here. I never use them. I do on this because this is more like art, right? This is a bit of jewellery rather than a. So that's your backstop. So you click that in and you can turn it round and it'll adjust how much the needle pulls back, the trigger pulls back, and then you just push it or pull it and it pops back out again. That kind of it's a nice thing on this one, so I keep it on that one. That's not an everyday brush though. That is like the automatics of airbrushes. So when it works, having had an automatics, it works brilliantly. But then if it's just slightly off because you might have just hit it into a wall flat out, it won't work as well. This is when the Eclipses, which are much more universal and they have much higher tolerances, they just work. And then I've also got my Sparmax Max 3, which is just an all-rounder for spraying large areas. So the hierarchy is newer Iwata, older Iwata, Infinity for special occasions, and then my Sparmax for big sections of white. But having more than one gun on the go is kind of a luxury. So a little bit of a reducer cleaner in there, just give it a bit of a zhuzh. I did clean these earlier. So I've got a little brush and some cleaner in there. Doesn't need a lot. Then put your finger over the end, and all you're trying to do is just agitate it. Then spray that out. I've got a box under here I spray into. Then a bit of tissue, and it should be ready. Right. So pearl blue, if you leave it long enough it'll all settle at the bottom. It'll be a completely different colour to the top half. So a couple of marbles in there, or old top deck screws. Very important with these pearls to get them wiggling about in there. Oh, have I got this one? I can show you this one. So this is just a neon pink, but it's a different colour at the bottom. I know no pink's the wrong colour to show on camera, but can you see it's thicker at the bottom there? So all the pigment is separated. Where's one I can show that's better? Well, that's got nothing in it, but look, you see it's a different colour. So they do separate over time, and it's good to give them a wiggle. And I found with a marble in there, you don't have to use as much elbow grease. Right, about halfway up. So it's just the standard size cup these things have. Oh, I ordered today a new bottle of the world's most expensive chrome. So I have literally a tiny bit in there, which hopefully will do for what I need to. But I ordered one bottle of that. So that's the 4104 Quicksilver. It's Quicksilver chrome. That's kind of a must, but it's very expensive. I think it's £44 a bottle for 120 ml. So it's a very expensive must, but a bottle will last you 2 or 3 months. Well, actually, no. Well, I had it worked out because during the summer I got 35 paint jobs out of a bottle. So that is a month for me. So start bragging. Oh yeah, I do this many a month. When I can do. I think this is paint job. I'm over 230 now, but I don't know how many I've done. I need to sit down and work it out. I know I've beaten last year. The end of December last year I had done 227, and I know I'm past 230 now. So if you can see now, the shading on the roof is kind of cool looking. Well, I think it looks cool. And then this side bit this will become a bit more obvious when I take out this book. I don't have the same colour he had on the shell he's given me as a tester. I haven't the same colour, so I've improvised. Although I don't want it to look the same. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some purple in it. So there's no harm in pouring what you haven't used back into your cup, your bottle. So a little bit of reducer cleaner. You don't need to completely fill the whole thing because it's a waste of cleaner. You're just wiggling the bit there in the middle at the bottom. Then finger over the end. Wash it about a bit. Don't wear new clothes because it goes everywhere. Trust me. I have more painting clothes than anything else now. Right. We're actually going to put some purple on the back of this now. See if we can dull this blue down a tiny bit. Because with pearl blue, you just put pearl black behind it, and it will make it a bit. It won't change the colour tone. So this is my way round. My compromise to try and get the same. It's not really doing a lot, to be honest. That's the cat on the roof, or the small horse when it jumps on it. I was hoping that was going to tone it down a bit. It hasn't really done it. The shell I have as reference, it looks blue, and then I put my blue next to it and it makes that shell look purple, so I haven't got that colour. as there was still a lot of paint in there and only a bit of reducer, I'm going to pour that back into there and it will live another day. So I tried to tone this blue down with a bit of purple afterwards. It hasn't really done anything. It has a little bit. It's given it some like slightly purple bits on the at a certain angle, but it still looks blue when you look at it. But I don't have the same colour as the last painter. You'd be surprised how much you think it's clean, and then you pour a little bit, and it just that backwashing it. The hardest colour to clean, as I keep on saying, is black, because the black pigment, it gets into, it's just an absolute bugger to change once you've got it in there. So I try and leave the black gun alone. So now we've got to do some shading around this tricky front section again. That's a bit more. Right, so now it's a case of just picking out carefully the rest of this hex pattern, which is a lot trickier now because there's black everywhere. I can't see where. This rough finish finishes. It's more obvious now. You can see it's this one here. You can kind of see where this that works all the way down in. It's going to be all the way along, but we're going to spray orange into that. But I can't see it as I'm picking it out. Just trying to get the light on it so I can see where, because I've deliberately tried to cut it rough. It's not a case of just peel and once you pick an edge it comes up nice and cleanly. This doesn't. So I've got to see where the little zigzag cuts are. That could have been a lot worse. So I'm now going to put some shading along that edge and this edge. There's not going to be a lot of this showing actually. It's going to be very tight. So now we're going to, where that's checkered, we're going to put some shading around it, which is easier said than done when you can't get the airbrush in there neatly. So I've just got to take it slowly. So this will make great coverage for a couple of seconds. I need something so I can see what I'm doing. Right, this is absolutely fiddly. I think I got away with that. So the best way to check is to put some white on it. No, I'm a great fan of checkered. I think checkered looks amazing on anything, especially on a flag, and you get to it first. But this looks wicked. like will lift out. Once I get the rest of it, it won't look as messy as this. And once I take this is now going to be a luminous yellow, and this is going to have an orange bit in here. But it's just getting it to look right on such a small shell. I like that. I didn't want to. I would love to have put the carbon fibre in it that he was after, but I didn't think it was gonna. And I think I'm right. I think it would have looked wrong because the scale would have been out of whack. Because the carbon fibre panels, which I've got as a plastic stencil, would be way too big for that size square. I think I'm making sense. It's like you wouldn't put honeycomb in there the size of a 20p piece because it wouldn't look right. And it's very similar to what I'm trying to get across as what I'm saying here. There's the hex panel. Look. Obviously anyone that's painted a buggy shell knows how fiddly these are around the front. I've got a little bit of pull out there which I've got to sort out, which I can do easily. So the next bit now is orange fade. Am I going to do any? Because I've done the blue, then I did purple. So the orange isn't going to react with it, so that I can pull that away now. In one. There you go, in two. In three. I missed that bit. Damn it. So I'm going to keep that white. I'm now going to take my better eye water and use this for the shading. So let's get rid of this black that's in here. Another reason for not having it absolutely to the brim, because if you want to change colours, you're not throwing away lots. Although you saw me put some reducer in and then throw it back in the pot, but I won't do that with the black because that's brand new. You showing off there, Scott? Big hands. What does big hands mean? Big gloves. Big pockets. Right, see where I'm going from like black, which is the darkest colour, to a luminous orange, which is one of the brightest. See, that's now, I thought that was clear. Oh, you can't see, damn. And I've just bog washed it and it's gone black again. So you only need little dribbles of this, but it's just getting all those little stubborn bits out. You'd be surprised how much crud comes out of these. But if when you first start off and you've only got one brush, you've got to continuously change shades, which drives you insane. So the luxury of having 2 or 3 brushes, or 4, is quite nice. And yet I'm still only using 2 of them. So I'll explain that one. So I have 2 different oranges. I'm going to go with the one I've got the most of. I need a little bit. Right, so I've got Neon Flame. That's Neon Orange. That's Neon Flame. Right. Oh, there's plenty in this one. I'm going to make sure that I had enough in that, or at least had a brand new one, so I could finish it off. Or do I want to do it in red? No, go orange. There's 2 schools of thoughts with this. You can do the luminous yellow first, then shade it with orange through the yellow, or you can do the orange first, then just spray it with yellow. So it's what you feel comfortable with doing, but I always find neon colours are a pain in the arse to shade with. They just don't shade. They're just too, I think they're too wet. So you have to build it up slowly over like 2 or 3 runs. And not be too precious with it. And you're going for a suggestion, you're not going for like an absolute ton of colour. If I was feeling brave, I would say that's enough, but I will do that again. I will do a bit more. You just want it, your eye is to drag, when you look at the shell, you want it to go to it, not be like, ugh, too much. You want it to be subtle. So it's one of my phrases which I like using, which is less is more. But it's very tricky to know when you've done enough. It's more of a confidence thing than anything else. Neon spraying and shading. If you get it too thick, it pulls and it spits and it causes these like little puddles which are really, really annoying. Nine times out of 10 I always end up with way too much. And then when it dries at half the, it almost completely disappears and you don't see it. Right, a luminous yellow. So I'm going to use my, because I still need to use the orange. So this is my Sparmax. On this one I put a Sparmax guard on the end, which means when the needle is all the way in, you still prick yourself just a tiny little bit. So every so often I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting that I've got to be a bit less, because when this turned up it had this like sawtooth. I wonder if it's any bigger. They're the same threads. Oh, that's better. One of them's just a little bit too shallow, so you end up stabbing yourself when you go and put your finger over the end to bog wash it. First world problems, having 4 brushes. A little prick. Right, luminous yellow. So before everyone says I'm using green, it's not. Because this camera makes it look a weird colour. It really picks out the pigment of it in the yellow and makes it look green. See all that rattling, and then that only just, I could see it stuck in the bottom in the corner, but it's obviously got stuck in the pigment, so just wiggling it around. Right. That's better, that looks yellow. Right, window frames at the front. This is the bit I struggled with the most, was cutting these odd angles to try and get the pinstripe around the inner window. Well, cutting it so it's square. And when I say square, I mean square to itself, so that you've got like a uniform, I hope that's uniform line. I'll look in a second. The touring cars, I've got fairly a decent idea now how to make a touring car pinstripe window frame look. But you haven't got these. Oh, I've got to run a knife around that, damn. That's what I mean. You've got to cut an odd angle, so you can't get the knife square. So the knife's at a slight angle, so the blade tends to wander. So even if you think you're going in a straight line, you might not be. So we'll see how wonky these look like in a second. But it's just a bit of patience. You're a little bit out, so just that front section. Very nice, Scott. Oh, you've done like a rear quarter window. Yeah, I see what you mean. I'm going to keep mine as one section, but I will use that as a reference for later. It's too difficult now to draw it on because I can't see through them, so I can't see where I'm cutting. If that's what you do to make yours unique, then well done. It's just finding those little touches that change, gives you your sort of stamp on it, if that makes sense. I'm just paranoid that I've got these pins the same all round, because the windows are very tiny. Yeah, it looks all right. Right. What I've done on mine is I've got a secondary, so there's two window frames there, so there's a black outer and then an luminous yellow inner. It will look a bit cleaner once it's all the masks, all the permanent marker lines are gone, hopefully. Now, have I got any? Oh, I've got a tiny bit. So it's also on the front window frame as well. So hopefully now I'm still worrying about this front hex. This is where you use your sharp tweezers to correct any bleeds. See, where you go down this section and cut hex panel, you're lifting each bit, and it just lifts it a little bit more than you would normally if you're just pulling it as one section. And so it's got all these little points where it can creep under. And it was just a little bit there, which was just annoying me. Right, now the bit that's been making me worry the entire time, which I should have done this, I can't do it first, but I want to do this bit first. Because what does this look like? I hope it doesn't look too sawtooth. That side's got a nice angle to it, but obviously where I've gone with the knife at a funny, it's more like a sawtooth. Looks like I've drawn around a jigsaw blade, if that makes sense. Whereas that side's better. So there's a definite good side, bad side. But it's such a tricky cut, because that's all having to zigzag that on the inside. Anyway. So now I can add a bit more orange to it if I don't think it was strong enough. Which is never normally the case. Normally it's not never strong enough. You can't really see it on this camera. You do the orange through the yellow. So you can always add to it after you've finished, or when you've added the coat of yellow. So it just looks bitty to you. You can't see the orange. Nearly there. Not that it's a race or anything. Bugger, I've nearly got to the end of that. well, it's flaring on the camera, you can't really see the colours. I'll take some photos and put them on the page. There you go, you get an idea of what I've done. So that's a luminous yellow into a luminous orange. Luminous orange around the front as well, with then this checkered flag sort of blended into it, which was the trickiest bit. And then you've got a flame on the roof that's shaded. So the camera doesn't like that, so it's looking a bit washed out. So I'll put some pictures up in a minute and you can marvel. Nah, it's a joke. You can have a proper look and see what I've done. But cutting all those sawtooths out were not 100% convinced yet. So anyway, so thank you very much for watching. Tonight just proves that not everyone's a winner. So hopefully I'll be doing some more bits and bobs in the coming weeks. It's coming up to Christmas now, so it's tricky to have the time really. But we'll see how we go. But I'll definitely be doing some more bits and bobs and annoying you all on as I do. So stay safe. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening and good night.